The billionaire CEO snapped, "I don't want a baby with you." 10 years later, he met the twins and realized what he lost. May every soul who has been cast aside rise with dignity untouched, wrapped in purpose and unshakable peace. May your tears water gardens that bloom more beautiful than anything you lost. May your strength multiply in the faces of those who doubted you, and may your story become the lighthouse for others lost in storms. You are the breath that keeps hope alive, the hands that build kingdoms from ruins, and the heart that loves despite the scars. May you find power in your pain, wisdom in your wounds, and victory in every step forward. My cherished family, tonight let your resilience speak louder than rejection. Your courage keeps this community strong. A like is a seed of blessing. A comment is a declaration of faith. This is Mission 1000 Blessings for every person who refuses to break, who chooses to rise, who shines despite the darkness. If you carry fire in your soul, like this video. If you walk with purpose and grace, comment, "I stand with Mr. Lewis." The rain hammered against the glass like 1,000 accusations. Alina stood in the center of that gleaming office, 47 floors above Manhattan, and watched the most powerful man she'd ever known look at her like she was nothing. "I don't want a baby with you." 5 words. That's all it took to shatter a world. Alexander Blackwell didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. His words landed with the precision of a surgeon's blade, cutting through every hope Elena had carried up in that elevator. She felt her hands trembling at her sides, felt the weight of 12 weeks pressing against her stomach, felt the future she'd imagined crumbling like ash. How convenient! His laugh was worse than anger. It was dismissal, pure, calculated dismissal. "You've probably already consulted lawyers about paternity settlements." Elena's throat closed. She'd rehearsed this moment in the mirror of her studio apartment, had practiced the words until they felt like armor. But standing here, watching him move around that enormous desk with the kind of grace that only came from never having to fight for anything, she realized no amount of preparation could protect her from this. That's not what this is. Her voice cracked despite every promise she'd made herself. "I'm not trying to trap you. I'm telling you because you deserve to know. I thought maybe you'd—" "What? Be happy?" Alexander stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and cold. "You thought I'd be happy that my carefully planned life is being derailed by an unplanned pregnancy with someone completely unsuitable?" The word hit her like a physical blow. Unsuitable. There it was. The truth beneath all the nights they'd spent together. All the whispered promises and gentle touches. She was unsuitable. The girl from Queens. The scholarship student. The executive assistant who'd been stupid enough to believe a man like Alexander Blackwell could see past the differences between them. Before she could respond, the office door opened. Victoria Blackwell swept in like winter itself. Designer handbag clutched in manicured hands. Pearls that probably cost more than Elena's entire education. She looked at her son first, then at Elena, and something cold settled in her expression. "Alexander, I came as soon as you called." Victoria's voice was measured, controlled. Then her eyes raked over Elena with instant assessment. "Oh, I see. So the rumors are true." "Mother, this doesn't concern you." Alexander's voice carried warning. "When someone tries to trap my son into fatherhood to access our family's wealth, it absolutely concerns me." Victoria moved closer to Elena. Despite being 5 inches shorter, she somehow managed to look down at her. "How much do you want? Let's skip the theatrics. Name your price." Elena's hands moved instinctively to her stomach, to the tiny life growing there, the life that had been unexpected but was now the only thing that felt real in this nightmare. "I don't want your money." Elena heard her own voice, stronger now despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. I wanted to believe he was better than this. Better? Victoria's laugh cut through the space between them. My dear girl, you're standing in one of the most powerful companies in the world. My son's decisions affect thousands of lives. And you think an unplanned pregnancy is going to, what, make him abandon his responsibilities for some romantic fantasy? I don't want him to abandon anything. Elena felt months of exhaustion crystallizing into something harder. Years of proving herself worthy. Decades of being told she wasn't enough. All of it sharpening into fury. I wanted him to be a human being. I wanted him to show even the smallest amount of character. But I see now that's asking too much. Alexander pulled out his checkbook. The leather thing Elena had once admired during late nights in his office when she'd believed his interest in her was about more than convenience. He began writing, the scratch of pen on paper loud in the sudden silence. This is what's going to happen, Elena. His voice was flat, businesslike. You're going to take this check, you're going to handle the situation discreetly, and you're going to sign a non-disclosure agreement that ensures you never speak about this, about us, about any of it. In exchange, you walk away with enough money to start over somewhere else. He tore the check free. The sound seemed to echo. He held it out to her, and Elena saw the number. More money than she'd see in a lifetime of work. Enough to erase all her student debt, to buy security, to never struggle again. She stared at that piece of paper, at the number that was supposed to represent the worth of her child's life, of her silence, of her dignity. For one terrible moment, she almost took it, almost convinced herself it would be easier, simpler, more practical than fighting people who had battalions of lawyers and unlimited resources. Then she felt it, the flutter of movement, so small she might have imagined it, but it was there, life, insistent and undeniable. Keep your money, Elena's voice came out steady, cold as winter rain. I don't want anything from you except one thing. I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember standing here, offering me a check like my child is a problem to be solved. Because someday, when you're surrounded by everything money can buy and nothing that matters, you're going to realize what you threw away. She turned toward the door, spine straight, refusing to let them see her crumble. You'll come back, Victoria's voice followed her. When reality hits and you're drowning in expenses you can't manage, you'll come crawling back with your hand out. They always do. Elena stopped at the door, didn't turn around. Her hand rested on the handle. I'm going to raise this child without you. Her voice rang clear through that enormous office. I'm going to finish my MBA. I'm going to build a career so successful that your company will want to hire me. And my child will grow up knowing they are wanted, loved, worth more than any check you could ever write. That's something your money can't buy, Mrs. Blackwell. She walked out, past rows of cubicles where coworkers pretended not to notice, past elevators with their polished brass and judgmental silence, down 47 floors to street level where rain soaked through her coat in seconds. 3 blocks, that's how far Elena made it before her legs gave out. She collapsed against a building, her body finally releasing the sobs she'd held back. The rain mixed with tears on her face. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Sophia, her roommate and best friend since freshman year. How did it go? Please tell me he wasn't a complete monster. Elena's hands shook as she typed back. He was worse than I imagined. Coming home. Need you. She stood in the rain, one hand pressed against her stomach, where life was growing despite the hatred she'd just endured, making a promise to that tiny heartbeat. Your father just made the biggest mistake of his life, Elena whispered the words into the storm. And one day, when you're grown and brilliant and unstoppable, he's going to realize exactly what he rejected. The city moved around her, thousands of people rushing past with umbrellas and purpose, none of them knowing that Elena Rossi's world had just ended and begun in the same afternoon. None of them understanding that rejection, that devastation, that 5-word dismissal would become the foundation of something extraordinary. But Elena knew.
Standing there in the rain with her cheap coat and empty bank account and a future that terrified her, Elena knew something Alexander Blackwell would spend a decade learning. You don't need someone to choose you. You choose yourself. And that choice, that single moment of deciding you're worth fighting for, that's where empires are born. She wiped her face, took a breath that hurt her ribs, started walking toward the subway that would take her back to Queens, back to the studio apartment with peeling paint and a heating unit that clanged like it wanted to explode, back to the life she'd built from nothing and would now rebuild with everything. The rain didn't stop, but Elena kept walking, one foot in front of the other, because that's what you do when the world tries to break you. You keep moving, you keep breathing, you keep choosing yourself. And you remember the name of the man who laughed at you, because someday he's going to remember yours. Elena's apartment smelled like instant coffee and stubborn determination. The walls were covered with sticky notes, deadlines, reminders, motivational quotes written in her own desperate handwriting at 3 a.m. when the world felt too heavy.
Her laptop sat on a desk made from cinder blocks and reclaimed wood. Textbooks surrounded it like fortress walls. Each one cost more than a week of groceries. But this cramped space in Queens was hers. Nobody could take that away, no matter how many zeros they had in their bank accounts. She sat cross-legged on her bed, one hand on her stomach, the other highlighting passages in a corporate strategy textbook. The nausea had evolved into something constant, a reminder that her body was no longer just hers, that every decision now affected someone else, someone who depended on her completely. The door burst open. Sophia struggled through with bags from the Korean market, her arms full of ginger candy and crackers, and the kind of practical love that came from friendship forged in survival. Okay, I talked to my manager. Sophia started unpacking supplies with military efficiency. She says you can have the evening shifts at the bookstore if you need them, sitting down, quiet, and the pay is slightly less terrible than your other options. I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. Sophia cut her off. That's what family does. Besides, when you're a CEO millionaire in 10 years, you can pay me back with a corner office and unlimited vacation. Elena managed a smile. When I'm a CEO, you're getting whatever you want. Right now, I want you to eat these crackers and drink this ginger tea before you pass out from stubbornness. Sophia arranged food with the care of someone who'd been managing crisis situations for years. Also, your mom called, 3rd time today. Elena's stomach clenched for reasons having nothing to do with pregnancy. What did you tell her? That you were in class. But Elena, you're going to have to tell her eventually. She's going to notice when her daughter shows up with a baby. I know. Elena pressed her hands to her face. She sacrificed everything to get me here, worked 3 jobs so I could go to college. She believed I was going to be the success story. And now I'm pregnant and alone and probably throwing away everything she built for me. You're not throwing away anything. Sophia sat beside her, their shoulders touching in familiar comfort. You're doing 5 impossible things before breakfast every day and somehow surviving. Your mom is going to see that, but maybe less focus on surviving and more focus on actually eating. The baby needs nutrients, not just determination. They negotiated for an hour, mapping out a schedule that felt like strategic warfare. Elena would keep her teaching assistant position at Columbia, but drop the weekend consulting gig. Sophia would cover more rent temporarily. Maria, Elena's mother, would be told the truth this weekend. It still wasn't enough hours in the day, but it was survivable. Maybe. The MBA program was brutal even without pregnancy complications. Elena's classmates were brilliant and competitive. Most came from backgrounds that hadn't required them to choose between textbooks and groceries. They studied in groups at expensive coffee shops. Elena studied on subway rides between jobs. They networked at evening events. Elena worked evening shifts and networked during lunch breaks. But she had something they didn't. Desperation sharpened into focus. Every case study wasn't academic exercise. It was survival training. She was learning the language of power, the mechanics of wealth, the systems people like Alexander Blackwell used to build empires. She was learning so she could build her own. Professor Chen noticed during a particularly brutal mergers and acquisitions seminar. "Miss Rossi, stay after class, please." Elena's heart sank. She'd been fighting to stay awake, her body demanding rest her schedule couldn't accommodate. She gathered her materials slowly, preparing for dismissal from the program she'd fought so hard to enter. The classroom emptied. Professor Chen waited until the last student left before speaking. "You're one of my strongest students." Her voice was quiet, measured. "Your analysis yesterday on the Techron acquisition was graduate-level thinking, but you look like you haven't slept in a week. What's going on?" Elena debated lying. The truth felt too vulnerable, too likely to be used against her. But something in Professor Chen's expression, not pity but recognition, made her honest. "I'm pregnant." Elena heard herself say the words. "Working 3 jobs to pay for school and prepare for a baby. The father isn't involved. I'm trying to keep up, but it's harder than I expected." Professor Chen was quiet for a long moment. "My mother was a single parent, immigrant from Taiwan. She worked in a factory while getting her accounting degree at night. I grew up doing homework in break rooms and employee lounges. I know what you're trying to do." "I'm not looking for special treatment." "I'm not offering special treatment." Professor Chen pulled out a folder. "I'm offering information."
There's a scholarship program specifically for graduate students facing unexpected hardship. Full tuition, living stipend, childcare support when the baby arrives. Competitive, but your academic record makes you a strong candidate. Applications are due next week. Elena took the folder with shaking hands. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because talent and determination shouldn't be wasted because life got complicated," Professor Chen smiled. "Because I watched my mother build something extraordinary from nothing, and I see that same quality in you. Because I think you're going to be one of those students we brag about in 20 years. Apply. Stop trying to do everything alone. That's not weakness, that's strategy." The scholarship application took 6 sleepless nights. Essays about hardship felt like excavating old wounds. Financial documents revealed exactly how precarious her situation was. Letters of recommendation required admitting vulnerability to professors she'd worked hard to impress. But Elena submitted it 3 minutes before deadline, then immediately returned to her regularly scheduled crisis management. Telling her mother was harder than any academic challenge. Maria Rossi sat in Elena's tiny apartment, hands wrapped around tea she wasn't drinking. Her face cycled through shock, disappointment, worry, and finally, surprisingly, fierce determination. "This man who did this," Maria's voice was tight, "he's not helping?" "He's not interested in being a father, Mama. He made that very clear." Maria's jaw tightened in ways Elena recognized. The same expression she'd worn with landlords who tried to cheat them, with bosses who thought immigrants could be paid less, with a world that constantly underestimated her. "Then we don't need him," Maria gripped Elena's hands. "You and me, we've done harder things than raising a baby while you finish school." "Mama, you already sacrificed so much." "I didn't sacrifice, I invested," Maria's voice was firm. "I invested in you because I knew you would do extraordinary things. A baby doesn't change that. It makes it harder, yes, but you're my daughter. You don't know how to quit." They cried together on that worn couch, Elena releasing fear she'd been holding for months. When they finally pulled apart, Maria was already making plans. She'd cut back hours at the restaurant, but could babysit during Elena's classes. Her apartment was bigger, so Elena should move in temporarily. They'd need to look into WIC benefits and healthcare programs. Watching her mother transform personal disappointment into strategic planning, Elena understood something fundamental. Strength wasn't inherited. It was built through surviving things that should have broken you. Her mother had taught her that. Now she'd teach her own child. The scholarship notification arrived on a Tuesday morning while Elena was between classes. She opened the email expecting rejection. There were only 3 scholarships, hundreds of applicants, but the words blurred as she read. "Congratulations, full support, starting immediately." She called Sophia first, screaming with joy that made other students stare. Then her mother, both crying so hard they couldn't speak coherently. Then she sat on the steps of the business school building, hands on her belly, telling her unborn child about their future.
"We did it, baby," Elena whispered through tears. "Mama did it. We're going to be okay. Better than okay. We're going to be extraordinary." Labor started during finals week, because of course it did. Elena was in the middle of her last exam when her water broke, soaking through her chair and sending the proctor into a panic. Sophia drove while Maria sat in back, holding Elena's hand through contractions that made previous pain feel like practice. The hospital was chaos, nurses rushing, doctors discussing complications in voices that weren't quiet enough. Elena gripped the bed rails and thought about Alexander, about his laugh, about the check he'd offered, about walking away with nothing except determination. This was nothing compared to that. The delivery was fast and overwhelming, 36 hours of labor that felt like dying and being reborn simultaneously, pain that rewrote her understanding of what bodies could endure. Then, suddenly, there were two tiny humans, surprise twins nobody had caught in earlier ultrasounds, screaming with lungs that announced they would never be ignored. Isabella came first, already furious at being evicted from warmth and darkness. 3 minutes later, Lucas followed, quieter but equally determined. The nurse placed them on Elena's chest, and she fell in love so completely, so instantly, that her previous understanding of love seemed like a rough draft. "They're perfect," Maria whispered, tears streaming. "They have your eyes." But they had Alexander's eyes too, that particular shade of gray-blue that couldn't be denied. Elena pushed that thought away. These babies were hers.
Completely, entirely, beautifully hers. The hospital social worker visited the next day with forms about birth certificates, information about the father. Elena looked at her sleeping twins, at the two miracles who'd survived despite rejection. "There is no father." Her voice was steel. "Leave that section blank." "But surely for medical history." "There is no father." Elena's voice turned colder. "These children have a mother who would die for them, a grandmother who will help raise them, and more love than most children ever know. That's all you need for those certificates." The social worker left, disapproval obvious but irrelevant. Elena had no space for people who couldn't understand that family wasn't defined by genetics. Family was defined by who showed up, who stayed, who loved unconditionally, even when it was hard. On the twins' first birthday, an envelope arrived. Thick paper, law firm return address, Blackwell family crest embossed in gold. Elena opened it to find a contract offering substantial payment in exchange for signed agreements that she'd never contact the Blackwell family, never claim paternity, never speak publicly about Alexander. They were trying to buy silence she'd already been giving freely. Elena carried that contract to the kitchen sink, pulled out a lighter, watched it burn. The smoke detector went off, making the twins laugh and clap from their high chairs. Elena laughed with them, the sound echoing through an apartment that was too small, but filled with more love than money could quantify. This was her answer. This would always be her answer. The years that followed were a blur of exhaustion and incremental victories. Elena graduated with her MBA while breastfeeding twins during study sessions. She took a junior analyst position at a tech startup, working nights after the twins were asleep. Sophia and Maria tag-teamed childcare like a military operation. Nobody slept enough. Everyone survived on coffee and determination. But slowly, impossibly, Elena's career began to rise. Her analysis was sharp, her strategies worked, her reputation grew. Within 3 years, she was promoted to senior analyst. Within 5, she was director of operations. Within 7, she was being headhunted by major companies. And through it all, Isabella and Lucas grew. Isabella became serious and analytical, always asking how things worked, always pushing to understand systems so she could improve them. Lucas became creative and curious, seeing the world through artistic eyes, asking questions about beauty and purpose that made adults pause. They were extraordinary, and they were hers. Elena never spoke Alexander's name in their home, never acknowledged his existence. When the twins asked about their father, she told them simple truth. He wasn't ready to be a parent. He made a choice.
That choice meant he wasn't part of their family. But they had her, they had their grandmother, they had Aunt Sophia. They had love that was complete and whole. The twins accepted this with the resilience of children who'd never known anything different. They didn't feel the absence of someone who'd never been present. Their world was full. Their mother showed up to every school event, every performance, every moment that mattered. They didn't know they were missing anything, because they weren't. 10 years after Elena walked out of Alexander Blackwell's office with nothing except determination, she walked into her own corner office at Meridian Technologies, Chief Operating Officer. The title still thrilled her, still felt like vindication written in official letterhead. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. Diplomas lined one wall. Testimonials from board members lined another. This was her kingdom, the empire she'd built from nothing, from rejection, from one man's cruelty transformed into fuel. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Miss Rossi, the board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Elena gathered her presentation materials. She'd prepared a quarterly review that would impress even the most skeptical board members. Her division had exceeded every projection. Her strategies had saved the company millions. Her leadership had transformed struggling departments into profitable powerhouses. She'd done this without connections, without inherited wealth, without anyone's approval except her own. The board meeting was standard corporate theater, powerful people posturing, strategic alliances shifting, everyone calculating advantage. But Elena had learned to speak this language fluently. She presented her results with calm authority, fielded questions with precise answers, navigated challenges with practiced ease. Afterward, the CEO pulled her aside. "Elena, phenomenal work as always. The merger with Techron is proceeding because of your negotiating skills. The board wants to discuss succession planning. Your name is at the top of the list." CEO, Chief Executive Officer. The title she'd been building toward since those desperate nights studying in subway cars with infant twins sleeping in carriers. "I'm honored," Elena's voice was steady. "I'll prepare whatever materials you need for that conversation." She walked through Meridian's offices with satisfaction that came from doing work that mattered. Junior employees looked at her with admiration. Senior leaders treated her with earned respect. This was her domain. The proof that being unwanted by one person didn't determine worth. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "Don't forget, school science fair tonight. The twins have been preparing for weeks. They're so excited to show you their projects." Elena smiled. Work mattered, but her children mattered more. She'd never missed a school event, never prioritized career over being present. That balance was exhausting but non-negotiable. Her children would never wonder if they were important enough. That evening, Elena stood in the school gymnasium transformed with cardboard displays and nervous excitement. Parents crowded the space, examining projects with varying degrees of interest. She scanned the room until she found them. Isabella stood beside a complex solar panel display, her posture confident, her notes meticulously organized. Lucas's exhibit featured architectural models showing engineering principles through aesthetic design. Both brilliant in completely different ways. "Mom," Isabella spotted her first, waving with contained enthusiasm. At 10, she was already developing the kind of focused intensity that reminded Elena of herself. "Come see my solar panel comparisons. I think I might have found an efficiency improvement." "Impressive." Elena moved to her daughter's side. "Walk me through your methodology." Isabella launched into explanation with genuine scientific rigor, discussing variables and controls and potential applications. This was her daughter, sharp, analytical, determined to understand how systems worked so she could make them better. Lucas pulled her to his display next. His explanation was more creative, focusing on how buildings could be both structurally sound and beautiful. He saw the world differently than Isabella, found poetry in angles, asked questions about why things looked certain ways. "You're both extraordinary," Elena told them, her heart swelling with pride so intense it was almost painful. "I'm so proud of the work you've done." there's a competition next month. Lucas's eyes shone with hope. If we win here, we go to regionals. Do you think we could win? I think you're already winners. Elena hugged both her children, breathing in their familiar scent. But yes, you absolutely could win regionals. You have the talent and determination. She was examining Isabella's data charts when she felt it. That primitive awareness of being watched. The kind of instinct that comes from years of having to be careful, of having to protect yourself in spaces that didn't welcome you. Elena turned slowly, scanning the crowded gymnasium, and her heart stopped. Alexander Blackwell stood near the entrance, frozen mid-step, his face completely drained of color. He looked older, worn in ways expensive suits couldn't hide. But what captured her attention was his expression. Shock so profound it resembled physical pain. Their eyes met across science fair chaos. 10 years collapsed into nothing. Elena saw the man who'd laughed at her pregnancy, who'd offered her money to disappear, who'd called her unsuitable. She wondered what he saw. Probably not the terrified assistant crying in the rain. Probably someone he didn't recognize at all. Then Isabella noticed him, her analytical mind processing his extended staring with the same focus she brought to everything. "Mom, why is that man looking at us?" Elena's protective instinct surged. Her hands moved to her children's shoulders, positioning herself between them and Alexander without conscious thought. "He's nobody, sweetheart." Her voice came out steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. "Come on, let's go look at the other projects." She guided Isabella and Lucas away, not running, walking with deliberate calm, refusing to let Alexander's presence disrupt their evening, refusing to give him power over this moment that belonged to her children. But she felt his eyes following them, felt the weight of his stare, felt 10 years of careful separation shattering like glass. He'd seen them. He knew they existed now, not as abstract concepts, as real children with faces and voices, and his eyes staring back. The collision she'd avoided for a decade had just happened. And Elena had no idea what came next. The flowers started arriving Monday morning, massive arrangements that barely fit through her office doorway.
White roses and orchids, probably worth more than most people earned weekly, with a card in handwriting Elena recognized despite a decade of trying to forget it. "Please, just 5 minutes. I'm begging you. Alexander." Elena didn't touch them. She pressed the intercom button, her voice calm and professional. "Donate these to the hospital wing. Better yet, trash them. And add Alexander Blackwell to my permanent block list. No deliveries, packages, or communications from him or anyone associated with Blackwell Industries." Her assistant hesitated. "Are you sure? These are very expensive." "I'm sure." Elena's tone left no room for discussion. "And if more arrive, same protocol. I don't want to see them." But the flowers kept coming. Different arrangements, different delivery services, each one ending up donated or discarded. After the 10th arrangement in a week, Elena stopped bothering with specific instructions. Her team knew the drill. Anything from Alexander went straight to disposal. Letters started arriving midweek, handwritten on expensive stationery, delivered through company mail, each one pleading for conversation, understanding, 5 minutes of her time. Elena read the first one out of morbid curiosity. "Elena, seeing them destroyed me. I can't sleep. I can't function. I have children I didn't know existed walking around with my eyes. Please let me explain. Please let me apologize. Please acknowledge I'm drowning. Alexander." She walked directly to her paper shredder and watched his words turn to confetti. There was something deeply satisfying about destroying his attempts to invade her peace. He thought words would fix what he'd broken. His desperation was his problem, not hers. Sophia found Elena in her office surrounded by shredded paper during lunch. "He called the bookstore 5 times this morning, begging me to talk to you, to convince you to see him. I hung up every time." "Block his number." Elena didn't look up from her laptop. "Tell your manager to block his number. I'm getting a restraining order." "Elena," Sophia's tone was careful,
I have to say something you won't want to hear. Elena finally looked up. What? When I finally answered just to tell him to stop, he sounded genuinely broken, like someone completely falling apart. Good. Elena's voice was flat, emotionless in the way that meant she was vibrating with fury. He should fall apart. He should feel every bit of pain he inflicted 10 years ago when I was pregnant and terrified and he called me unsuitable. You're not actually suggesting I feel sorry for him. I'm not suggesting anything, Sophia sat carefully. I'm just telling you what I observed. But he did say something that bothered me. He said seeing Isabella and Lucas broke something in him that can't be fixed, that watching his children exist without him feels like dying slowly. He doesn't have children, Elena stood, pacing. He has biological offspring he rejected before they existed. There's a difference. I'm tired of his presence haunting my life. I want him gone completely. Then maybe face him once. Tell him exactly what you think. Make absolutely certain he understands he has no place in your life. End this once and for all. Sophia watched carefully. His desperation will only escalate unless you shut it down definitively. Elena wanted to argue, but she knew Sophia was right. Ignoring Alexander wasn't making him disappear. It was feeding his obsession. She needed to face him. Tell him with brutal clarity he had no path back. Close this door so firmly he'd never try opening it again. Fine. Elena pulled out her phone. 1 meeting. 15 minutes. You're coming as witness. Then I'm getting the restraining order, and he's banned from my life permanently. 3 days later, Elena sat in a conference room at Meridian with Sophia beside her, waiting. Her hands were steady, expression controlled, but inside, she felt like she was preparing for battle. This man once had power to destroy her. Now she would prove he had no power at all. Alexander entered looking worse than she'd expected. His expensive suit couldn't hide exhaustion, weight loss, making clothes hang wrong, the general appearance of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. He saw Elena, and something in his face crumbled. Elena, thank you for seeing me. His voice was hoarse. I know I don't deserve... You get 10 minutes, not 15. 10. Elena's voice was cold as surgical steel. Then I leave, and you never contact me again. Understood? Understood. Alexander sat down, his hands shaking visibly. I don't know where to start. I've rehearsed this 1,000 times. Start with why you think you have any right to any of my time whatsoever. I don't. Elena's voice cracked. I have no right, no excuse, no justification for what I did 10 years ago. But I saw them, Elena. I saw Isabella and Lucas. I saw my children, and it destroyed me in ways I can't explain. They're not your children, Elena leaned forward.
They're my children. You rejected them before they existed. You don't get to claim them now just because reality caught up. You called them unsuitable. You offered me money to make the problem disappear. Why would you possibly think I'd let you anywhere near them now? I don't think that. Alexander wiped his eyes roughly. I know you won't. I know I don't deserve to know them. But I need you to understand that seeing them has completely broken me. I can't function knowing those beautiful children are walking around and I'm not allowed to what? Be their father? Elena's voice cut through his words. You're not their father. You're a sperm donor who panicked and ran. Fathers show up. Fathers do the work. Fathers sacrifice. You did none of those things. Her voice was rising now, despite her best efforts to stay controlled. Do you have any idea what the past 10 years were like? Working 3 jobs while pregnant with twins I didn't even know were twins? Studying for finals while in labor? Raising 2 children alone while building a career? Going through every milestone without the man who got me pregnant because he decided I was too much trouble. I'm so sorry. Alexander was openly crying. I know sorry is worthless, but I don't know what else to say. I was a coward. I was weak. I let my family pressure me into the worst decision of my life. I threw away something precious because I was scared and stupid and thought money could fix anything. You were wrong about everything. Elena's voice turned clinical, cold. But being wrong doesn't earn you redemption. My children have everything they need.
They have a mother who would die for them. They have a grandmother who helped raise them. They have a family that's complete and whole. Your presence isn't necessary for their happiness. Actually, your absence is probably better. They'll never feel the rejection you're capable of. I understand that. Alexander's voice was barely above a whisper. But I'm asking you to consider that maybe, when they're older, they might have questions. They might want to know their father. And I'm asking you to tell them I'm here, that I'm sorry, that I want to be part of their lives if they'll let me. You want me to tell my 10-year-old children that their father is suddenly interested? Elena felt fury building. That the man who abandoned us wants to play dad now that it's convenient? Why would I do that to them? They're happy. They're secure. They've never asked about you because they don't feel your absence. Why would I introduce instability into their perfect lives just to make you feel better about your guilty conscience? Because everyone deserves to know where they come from. Alexander's voice strengthened slightly. Because hiding the truth from them will eventually cause more damage. I'm not saying you have to let me see them now, but someday they're going to have questions. I'm asking you to tell them the truth instead of pretending I don't exist. The truth is you're a stranger who shares their DNA. Elena stood. The truth is you had the chance to be their father and chose money over them. The truth is you're 10 years too late. Your 10 minutes are up. Leave my building. Leave my life. Stop sending flowers and letters. Get a restraining order if necessary. But understand this. You will never know Isabella and Lucas. You will never be part of their lives. That's the consequence of your choice 10 years ago. She walked toward the door, but Alexander's voice stopped her. Your mother came to see me. She said you accepted the trust fund I set up for the twins. Elena turned back slowly. I accepted it because it benefits my children, not because it gives you any rights. That money sits in accounts they'll access when they're adults. It changes nothing about their relationship with you, which is none. I know, Alexander's voice was quiet, but it proves that despite everything, you're willing to do what's best for them, even when it means accepting help from people you hate. That's what a good mother does. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to leave a door open, even just a crack, for the possibility that someday things might be different. There is no door. Elena's voice was final, absolute. There's a wall, a fortress, and you're on the wrong side permanently. Goodbye, Alexander. Don't contact me again. She walked out with Sophia close behind, neither woman looking back. They made it to Elena's office before either spoke. You handled that perfectly, Sophia said quietly. You didn't give him anything. I feel like I just went through surgery without anesthesia. Elena sank into her chair. He looked so broken, so genuinely destroyed. Part of me wants to feel satisfied, but mostly I feel nothing. That's good. Feeling nothing means he can't hurt you anymore. But that night, lying in bed unable to sleep, Elena found herself thinking about Alexander's tears, about the genuine devastation in his voice, about whether his transformation was real or manipulation. She hated that she was even considering these questions. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I'm not contacting you again, I promise, but I needed you to know. Isabella has your determination in her eyes. Lucas has your creativity in his smile. They're extraordinary because you made them that way. I'll live with the consequences of missing that. Thank you for raising them to be better than I ever could have been. A. Elena stared at the message. Then she blocked the number and deleted the text. But she couldn't delete the words from her memory, couldn't stop thinking about Alexander, watching her children from across a gymnasium, close enough to observe, but too far away to be part of their lives. Lucas asked the question on a Saturday morning while Elena made pancakes, her movements automatic from years of weekend rituals. Isabella was still asleep, sprawled across her bed in the boneless way only children managed. But Lucas sat at the kitchen counter, watching his mother with intensity that made her nervous. Mom, why don't we have a father? The words came out simple and direct, no preamble, just a question that had apparently been building inside him. Elena's hands stilled over the mixing bowl. She'd prepared for this moment since the twins were born, practiced responses with her therapist, promised herself she'd never lie about anything important. But preparation didn't make reality easier. She set down the whisk carefully, walked around the counter and sat on the stool next to Lucas, so they were eye level. "You do have a father." Her voice was gentle but honest. "Everyone has a biological father. But your father and I knew each other before you and Isabella were born. And when I told him I was pregnant, he wasn't ready to be a parent. He made a choice to not be part of our family. So I raised you both with Grandma and Aunt Sophia. That's the truth, baby." Lucas absorbed this with characteristic thoughtfulness, his brain working through implications the way he worked through everything, carefully, analytically. Did he not want us because we did something wrong? Oh, sweetheart, no. Elena cupped his face, needing him to see absolute truth. This had absolutely nothing to do with you and Isabella. You weren't even born yet. His choice was about his own fears, his own limitations. It was never, ever about you not being enough or lovable. You and your sister are the most wanted children in the world. I chose you over everything. Every single day I choose you. But kids at school have moms and dads. Lucas's voice got smaller. The books always show families with both. Are we different because we only have you? Elena's heart cracked. Some families have two parents. Some have one. Some have grandparents raising kids, or aunts and uncles, or two moms, or two dads. There's no single way a family has to look. Our family has me, Grandma, Aunt Sophia, you, and Isabella. That's our family. It's different from some families, but it's not less than. It's exactly what we need. Kids talk about their dads teaching them sports, or fixing things, or camping. Lucas leaned into his mother. I never know what to say. I just pretend I'm not listening. The image of her son feeling isolated by classmates' casual conversations made Elena's protective instinct surge. Has anyone been mean about this? Made you feel bad about our family? No, nobody's mean. But I feel like I'm keeping a secret sometimes. Like there's something different about us I can't explain. There's nothing wrong with us. Elena held him close. Nothing. Our family is strong and full of love and completely whole. Any kid would be lucky to have what you and Isabella have. They sat like that for a long moment, neither wanting to break connection. When Lucas finally pulled back, his expression had shifted into something Elena recognized, determination layered over hurt. I don't think I want to meet him. Lucas's voice carried an edge of anger she'd never heard from her gentle son. Our father. If he didn't want us then, I don't need him now. Isabella and I are fine without him. That's your choice, baby. Elena meant every word. That's completely valid and I support you. You don't owe him anything, including forgiveness or curiosity. If you never want to know him, that's okay. Isabella wandered into the kitchen then, hair sticking up in all directions, pajamas twisted around her body. Are we having pancakes? I smell pancakes. She climbed onto a stool, oblivious to the heavy conversation. But Isabella, with her analytical mind, looked at her brother's serious expression. Why does Lucas look sad? Did something happen? I'm not sad. Lucas's voice was carefully neutral, just thinking about stuff. That afternoon, while the twins were at the park with Maria, Elena sat with Sophia, recounting the conversation. Her best friend listened with focused attention.
He's handling it remarkably well for 10. Sophia sipped her coffee. But that anger he's carrying toward Alexander worries me. That's going to grow if it's not addressed properly. What am I supposed to do? Elena's voice was defensive. Tell him he should give his father a chance? Tell him the man who abandoned us deserves forgiveness? No, Sophia's voice was gentle but firm. But you might help him understand that his anger is valid while also making sure it doesn't consume him. Kids who grow up with too much unprocessed rage about absent parents sometimes end up damaged in ways nobody expects. I'm not saying you need to let Alexander into their lives. I'm saying Lucas needs tools to process feelings that aren't just fury. I'll talk to his school counselor. Elena rubbed her temples. Maybe he needs someone neutral to work through this. Days later, Isabella did something that shocked everyone. Maria had taken the twins to a charity 5K that Meridian sponsored. Elena couldn't attend due to emergency meetings, but Maria sent photos throughout the morning. Twins at starting line, twins with race medals, twins drinking water at finish. Then her phone rang. Maria's voice was tight. Elena, something happened. Isabella saw Alexander at the race. He was volunteering at a water station.
She walked right up to him and said something. I tried to stop her, but she was too fast. Elena's blood turned to ice. What did she say? She said, "My mother doesn't need you." Maria's voice mixed pride with concern. Then she walked away. Alexander looked like Isabella had physically struck him, just stood there holding water bottles while my granddaughter walked back like nothing happened. Elena felt panic rising. Did he try to approach them? Did he say anything to Isabella? No, he just stood there looking devastated, then disappeared into the crowd. Maria paused. But Elena, Isabella knew who Alexander was. Somehow she figured it out. Lucas told her. Elena closed her eyes. I heard them talking later. Lucas said the man had our eyes, that he must be their father. They figured it out through observation and 10-year-old logic. Elena felt her carefully constructed protection shattering. Her children knew. They had figured it out and were now making their own decisions, acting on that knowledge without her guidance. She'd lost control of the narrative, and that terrified her more than anything. That night, she sat both twins down for a conversation she hadn't planned to have for years. Grandma told me what happened at the race. Elena kept her voice calm. That you saw someone and Isabella said something to him. The twins exchanged glances, that twin communication without words that had existed since they shared a womb. Finally, Isabella spoke, her voice firm and analytical. We figured out who our father is. The man at the science fair had the same eyes. Then we saw him at the race. We just knew. And you decided to confront him? Elena's voice was carefully neutral. I wanted him to know that we don't need him. Isabella's voice was fierce, protective of her mother in ways that made Elena's heart ache. That you're enough for us. That he can't just show up and think we'll want him now. Was that wrong? It wasn't wrong. Elena pulled both twins close. It was brave, but it was also something you didn't need to do. Protecting me isn't your job, baby. That's my job. I need you to understand something important. Your father's presence or absence in your lives is not your responsibility. You don't need to reject him to prove you love me. You don't need to protect me from him. I'm the adult. I handle adult problems. But we wanted him to know. Lucas's voice was quiet but firm. We wanted him to know that we're happy without him. And now he knows. Elena kissed both their heads. But going forward, if you ever see him again, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to acknowledge him. You can just walk away and tell me, and I'll handle it. Your only job is to be kids, to be happy and safe and loved. Everything else is my responsibility. After putting them to bed, Elena stood in their doorway watching them sleep. Her children were growing up faster than she wanted, developing their own relationships with the father who'd rejected them, making choices about Alexander without her input. The fortress she'd built had cracks now, and she didn't know how to seal them without damaging her children in the process. Victoria Blackwell's living room looked like a design magazine spread, all carefully curated elegance and expensive meaninglessness. But today, the perfection felt suffocating. She sat on her pristine white sofa, pressing a handkerchief to her eyes while her makeup ran in dark streaks. Across from her, Alexander looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, his eyes hollow and red-rimmed. The son she'd raised to take over an empire was falling apart, and she was finally understanding that she'd helped break him. I can't sleep, Mother.
Alexander's voice was raw. I close my eyes and I see them. Isabella's fierce independence, Lucas's creative spirit, my children walking around thinking they don't have a father because I was too much of a coward to claim them. You weren't a coward? Victoria's words sounded hollow even to her own ears. You were protecting your future, making a practical decision. I was a coward. Alexander looked up at his mother, his eyes accusatory in ways they'd never been. We both know it. You pushed me to walk away, and I let you. I offered money to a pregnant woman like she was a problem to solve. I called my own children unsuitable. And now I'm reaping exactly what I sowed. He stood up, pacing, his movements agitated. You told me Elena was trying to trap me. You told me those babies probably weren't even mine. You convinced me walking away was self-preservation. And I believed you because it was easier than being a man. Victoria flinched, the truth landing like physical blows.
I thought I was protecting you. I thought she was using you for our money. I thought I was being a good mother. You were being a classist who couldn't stand the thought of your grandchildren coming from a lesser background. Alexander's voice was cold now, grief hardening into something sharp. You were being someone so obsessed with stats that you couldn't see Elena's worth. Don't dress it up as maternal protection. Own what you did. The words hung between them like poison gas. Victoria wanted to argue, wanted to defend herself, but the truth sat on her chest like a stone. Everything Alexander accused her of was accurate. She had looked at Elena and seen only what was lacking. The right family connections, the right background, the right social standing. She had been so certain her son deserved better, never considering that better wasn't measured by pedigree or bank accounts. I was wrong. The words came out barely above a whisper. I was so wrong about Elena, about those children, about what matters. I convinced myself I was protecting our family legacy, but I was just protecting my own prejudices. And now we've lost something we can never get back. Alexander's father, Richard, entered the study, having overheard from the hallway. His face was grave. You listen to Elena. Richard's voice was firm. She's the only one whose opinion matters. She's the mother. She's the one who did the work, made the sacrifices, built the life those children have. Whatever she says goes. That's how you know if you're helping or hurting. She won't talk to me. Alexander's voice was flat, defeated. She's blocked every attempt. She got a restraining order. I'm not allowed within 500 feet of her or the children. I destroyed any chance I had when I laughed at her 10 years ago. She'll never forgive me, never give me a chance, and she's right not to. Then you accept that consequence. Richard sat down. You live with the knowledge that you have children you'll never know. You work on becoming the kind of man who would have deserved to be their father. Even if you never get the opportunity, you do the work anyway. That sounds like torture. Alexander's laugh was bitter. It's accountability. Richard's voice was kind but firm. It's what growing up looks like when you've made catastrophic mistakes. You're not owed forgiveness. You're not owed a relationship with those children just because you share DNA. Elena has built them a life where they're loved and secure and completely whole. Your presence isn't necessary for their happiness. Victoria listened to her husband speak these hard truths and felt something shift inside her. I need to see her. Elena, I need to apologize face to face. I need her to hear me acknowledge how wrong I was. She won't see you, Mother. Alexander's voice was hollow. She wants nothing to do with any of us. Then I'll write a letter. Victoria stood up, her decision made. A real apology, not asking for anything. She can burn it if she wants, but I have to try. I can't fix what I broke, but I can stop pretending I didn't break it. That night, Victoria sat at her desk, writing and rewriting a letter to Elena. Every word felt inadequate to express the magnitude of her regret. How did you apologize for trying to convince someone their children weren't worthy of acknowledgement? The paper filled with crossed-out sentences, inadequate phrases. Finally, she wrote something simple and true. Dear Elena, I was wrong about everything. I'm sorry for everything. You owe me nothing, including the courtesy of reading this letter. But I needed you to know that I see now what I couldn't see then. You are extraordinary. Your children are extraordinary. And my family's loss is entirely our own fault. With deepest regret, Victoria Blackwell. She sealed the letter, addressed it, set it aside to be mailed. It wouldn't change anything, wouldn't undo damage or earn forgiveness. But it was a start toward becoming someone who could look at herself without shame. 6 months passed like water wearing down stone. Alexander stopped showing up at Meridian, stopped sending flowers, stopped texting Sophia desperate pleas. Elena's world returned to its carefully constructed peace, a quiet that felt earned rather than fragile. She had won. Alexander had finally accepted defeat and disappeared back into whatever life existed for men who abandoned their children. But Sophia noticed something during their weekly dinners. "You seem different lately, less on edge, like you've been sleeping better." "I have been sleeping better." Elena sipped her wine. "Without Alexander's constant harassment, I can breathe again. It's been months since I've heard his name." "That should make you happy." Sophia studied her friend. "But you seem almost disappointed that he gave up." "I'm not disappointed." Elena's voice was firm. "I'm relieved. This is exactly what I wanted." "If you say so." Sophia dropped it, knowing when to push and when to let Elena work through things on her own timeline. What Elena didn't know was that Alexander's silence wasn't defeat, it was transformation. He had taken his therapist's words seriously, had accepted that his pursuit of Elena and the children was about his guilt rather than their well-being. So he stopped pursuing. Instead, he started changing. He began volunteering at children's hospitals, reading to kids recovering from surgery, helping families navigate insurance paperwork, doing unglamorous work that required showing up consistently without recognition. The staff didn't connect him to Elena's personal life. They just saw a wealthy man who appeared every Tuesday and Thursday morning, quiet and helpful. He joined a support group for absent fathers, men who'd made terrible choices and were trying to understand themselves well enough to break destructive patterns. He listened to their stories, shared his own, sat with collective shame and regret without trying to perform redemption for an audience. He moved out of the family mansion into a modest apartment, cutting himself off from privilege that had insulated him from consequences his entire life. He started therapy 3 times weekly, diving into the damage that had made him capable of such cruelty. His friends barely recognized him. The charming, careless Alexander who'd floated through life on family money and good looks had been replaced by someone serious, focused, almost grim in his determination to understand how a person became capable of calling their children unsuitable. Victoria watched her son transform with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "He's becoming someone I barely recognize, someone better than he was, but the cost of that growth is devastating to watch." Richard nodded. "He's doing the work, real work, not performative gestures. Whether it ever matters to Elena and the children is irrelevant. He's doing it because it's right, not because he thinks it will earn him anything." "Do you think there's any chance they'll ever let him in?" Victoria's voice was small, hopeful, despite knowing hope was probably foolish. "Even a little?" "That's not our question to ask." Richard's voice was gentle. "We don't get to hope for anything from Elena. We just have to live with what we did and try to be better people going forward." One morning, Maria was bringing the twins to Meridian for their usual after-school visit. They arrived early because Isabella had a project about business leadership and wanted to interview her mother. In the building's community center, they encountered Alexander reading to a small group of children from the employee daycare. Maria recognized him immediately. She'd seen photos, heard descriptions, memorized the face of the man who'd hurt her daughter so deeply. She froze, instinctively positioning herself between Alexander and her grandchildren. But Isabella and Lucas were already moving closer, drawn by the sound of an animated voice reading a story about space exploration. Alexander didn't notice them at first. He was fully engaged with his young audience, doing different voices for each character, making children laugh despite their various challenges. Then he glanced up and saw Isabella and Lucas standing at the edge of the group, their gray-blue eyes wide with interest. Maria watched something complex and painful move across Alexander's face. Recognition, grief, wonder, love. He looked at his children the way parents look at miracles. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Lucas, with characteristic curiosity, asked a question. "What happens next in the story? Does the astronaut make it home?" Alexander's voice caught in his throat. He had to clear it twice before answering. "The astronaut learns that home isn't just a place. It's the people who love you, who wait for you, who believe you're worth coming back to." "That's a good message," Isabella's voice was cautious, analytical.
Most space stories focus too much on the adventure and not enough on why it matters. You're absolutely right, Alexander smiled, the expression achingly genuine. Most stories do get that wrong. Are you here visiting someone? Our mother works here. Lucas announced this with absolute confidence, pride radiating. She runs this whole company. She's the best at what she does. I've heard about her. Alexander's eyes filled with tears he couldn't quite hide. Everyone says she's extraordinary. You must be very proud of her. We are. Isabella stepped closer to her grandmother, some instinct telling her this stranger was significant in ways she didn't understand. She's the most amazing person in the whole world. Maria found her voice. We should go find your mother. We're going to be late. She herded them toward the elevator. As they waited for doors to open, Lucas turned back and waved at Alexander. Bye, you're really good at reading stories. Alexander waved back, his face crumbling the moment elevator doors closed. Maria saw it happen, saw this man who'd once been so cavalier completely break down in a public space. She should have felt satisfaction. Instead, she felt something uncomfortably close to pity. When they reached Elena's office, Maria debated whether to tell her daughter about the encounter. Elena was reviewing quarterly reports, looking calm and content. Maria decided to say nothing. The moment had passed without incident. The twins had no idea who they'd been talking to. There was no reason to disrupt Elena's peace. But that night, Lucas asked his grandmother a question that stopped her heart. Grandma, that man reading stories today, he looked really sad when Isabella said Mom is the most amazing person. Why would that make someone sad? Maria chose words carefully. Sometimes adults have complicated feelings about things that don't make sense to kids. He was probably thinking about his own life, not anything you said. I think he knows Mom. Lucas's perceptiveness was both gift and challenge. I think maybe he used to know her a long time ago, and something bad happened, and now he's sad about it. He had the same eyes as me and Isabella. Did you notice that? Maria's breath caught. What makes you think that? I just noticed. Lucas went back to his homework. Lots of people have gray-blue eyes, though. It probably doesn't mean anything. But Maria knew her grandson. He'd made a connection he wouldn't forget, and Elena's carefully constructed wall had developed another crack. The awards ceremony was held in an auditorium transformed with banners and nervous excitement. Elena sat in the 5th row, surrounded by other parents, Maria on one side, Sophia on the other. Her children were backstage, preparing for their presentations. Both had won regional competitions that led to this moment. Isabella was receiving recognition for her renewable energy research. Lucas was being honored for his architectural design that had won a national youth competition. Both her children, brilliant in completely different ways, about to be celebrated publicly for achievements that made Elena's heart swell with pride so intense it was almost painful. The ceremony began. Isabella walked onto stage first, her small figure radiating confidence as she explained her research to an auditorium full of people. Every word was calculated, thoughtful, brilliant. When she finished, the crowd erupted in applause. Elena's eyes filled with tears. This was her daughter. This brilliant, focused, extraordinary girl was hers. Lucas's presentation came next, a visual display of his architectural design with explanation of engineering principles and aesthetic choices that showed maturity beyond his years. His joy was infectious, his creativity undeniable. When he finished, the applause was equally thunderous. Elena made her way backstage after the ceremony. Isabella and Lucas were waiting, both their faces flushed with accomplishment. You were both magnificent, Elena hugged them. I'm so proud of you I could burst. Did you see how many people were taking notes during my presentation? Isabella's excitement was rare and precious. Some of them were actual engineers. And did you notice the architectural firms that gave me their cards? Lucas bounced with characteristic energy. They said to contact them when I'm older. I saw everything. Elena kissed both their heads. You were both perfect. As they walked toward the exit, Elena saw him. Alexander stood in the back of the auditorium, partially hidden by a pillar, his face wet with tears. He must have bought a ticket, must have sat in the back where he wouldn't be noticed, must have watched his children present with the knowledge that he had no right to be there. Maria stopped walking.
For a long moment, she and Alexander simply looked at each other across the crowded auditorium. Then something unexpected happened. Isabella noticed him. For a moment, she just stared, processing. Then she whispered something to Lucas, who looked and nodded. Together, without prompting from anyone, they walked toward Alexandra. Elena felt her heart stop. Maria and Sophia moved to intercede, but Elena held up a hand, stopping them. This moment, whatever it was, belonged to her children now, not to her, not to Alexander, to Isabella and Lucas, who were old enough to make their own choices. She watched from a distance as her children approached their father, watched as Alexander's face crumbled with emotion, watched as Isabella spoke. She couldn't hear the words, but saw Alexander nod, saw him wipe his eyes, watched as Lucas said something that made Alexander smile despite his tears. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. Then Isabella and Lucas turned and walked back to Elena, their expressions thoughtful but not distressed. "What did you say to him?" Elena asked quietly, her hands on both their shoulders. "I told him that you're the best mother in the world." Isabella's voice was matter-of-fact, analytical. "That we don't need anything from him, but that maybe someday, when we're older, if we decide we want to know him, we'll let him know. I also told him that if he ever tries to hurt you again, he'll regret it. I told him that his space design wasn't very practical, but showed good understanding of aerodynamics." Lucas shrugged. "And that I hope he becomes a better person." Elena looked at her children, her extraordinary, compassionate, fierce children, and felt something shift permanently. They were growing up, making their own decisions, and she had to trust that she'd given them the tools to make good ones. Alexander didn't approach, didn't try to extend the conversation. He simply stood there with tears streaming down his face, watching his children walk away, respecting the boundaries they'd set. That night, after putting the twins to bed, Elena found a note that had been slipped into her coat pocket, probably when she wasn't looking. Alexander's handwriting. "They're extraordinary. Thank you for giving them the choice. I'll be here if they ever decide they want to know me, but I understand if that day never comes. What you've built is perfect. I was wrong about everything. A." Elena held the note for a long time, then folded it carefully and put it in a locked box in her closet. A box that contained the twins' birth certificates, their first hospital bracelets, photographs from their early years, a box of memories and important documents. Someday, if Isabella and Lucas wanted to know more, if they had questions she couldn't answer, she would give them this note. She would give them the choice. But that was for someday, for when they were ready, for when they decided. Tonight, they were 10-year-old children who had just won major awards and were now sleeping peacefully in their beds, secure in the knowledge that they were loved completely and unconditionally. Elena walked to their bedroom doorway, her nightly ritual of watching them sleep. Isabella sprawled across her bed, claiming territory. Lucas curled up with his sketchbook beside him, having fallen asleep while designing something new. They were perfect. They were everything. And they were hers. Whatever happened with Alexander in the future was a choice her children would make when they were ready. But Elena's story wasn't about him anymore. It never really was. She hadn't needed his return to become a queen. She had crowned herself years ago in the rain outside his office building, when she chose her unborn child over everything else, when she decided that rejection from one person didn't determine her worth or her children's worth. The dismissal that had nearly destroyed her had instead forged her into something unbreakable. And Isabella and Lucas would grow up knowing that love wasn't about who stayed or who left. Love was about showing up every single day and choosing your people over comfort, over pride, over fear. Elena turned off the hallway light, leaving her children sleeping peacefully. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, new moments requiring strength she would somehow find. But tonight, in this modest house in Queens, filled with more love than penthouse apartments could contain, Elena Rossi knew she had won. Not because Alexander came back, not because his family regretted their choices, but because she had built a life so beautiful and complete that their absence created no holes. She had promised that unborn child 10 years ago that their father's rejection would be his loss, not theirs. She had kept that promise. And whatever the future held, that would never change. May every soul who rises from ashes know this truth. You don't need validation from those who dismissed you. You don't need apologies from those who abandoned you. You need only the courage to choose yourself.
To build something so magnificent from the wreckage that your existence becomes the answer to every question they should have asked. May your children know they were chosen. May your strength become their inheritance. May your story remind others that being unwanted by one person doesn't determine your worth. It reveals theirs. This is for every parent who did it alone, for every person told they weren't enough, for every dreamer dismissed by people too small to see greatness. You are the empire. You are the victory. You are the proof that rejection is just redirection towards something better. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever had to crown yourself, let me know. Comment, "I stand with Mr. Lewis." Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, your story isn't over. It's just beginning.